back to another episode of All Things Science, Technology, Math, and Engineering. Today we have with us, we're lucky to have Quentin Prideaux. Welcome, Quentin.
Thank you.
So Quentin is a partner at Alder Associates, and he's a leader in the field of climate change and the Climate Reality Project. He's also a leader and founding member of the townwide organization Sustainable Wellesley. Prior to joining Alder Associates, Quentin's experience included large system sales for Hewlett-Packard, board membership of a successful startup, telecom startup, and strategy consulting for CSC Index. He's been on the BBC and on Fox Europe speaking about the strategic impact of e-business and addressed conferences on relationship marketing. Quentin is a physicist and has an MBA and will be speaking about climate change in a presentation titled Climate Reality at the Wellesley Science and Technology Expo here on April 5th at the Wellesley High School. So let's get started. Where did you grow up?
Well, as you can probably tell, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in London, England, just southwest of London. Yeah, I was there until 2000. So I married an American woman. We met over there and moved over here 14 years ago.
Awesome. And so when you were a child growing up, what did you think you were going to be when you were young?
It's not what I thought I would be. I think it was who I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be Jimmy Page,
Excellent.
Led Zeppelin guitarist. It did turn out that I wasn't one of the most gifted guitarists on the planet, though. So I went to Plan B.
Or you just didn't spend enough hours practicing.
Okay, well,
right?
that too, yes. So I went into physics because I liked it. I was interested in it, and then I guess I'm on Plan C because physics. I discovered that you either had to teach or do research, pretty much, and I didn't feel like doing either of those. So I moved into business, and as you said in the introduction, a number of things. And now I'm a MBA strategy consultant, partner in a small firm.
Excellent. And so tell us some of what your earliest childhood memories are about what got you interested in going into physics or in climate change and science.
It was finding the answers to puzzles. It was working out how things worked. It was, solving problems. So, and then some of it is just weird and wonderful and exciting, when you get quantum physics and relativity, and it's interesting, it's impressive to people, so I just enjoyed finding out more about it.
And what did you have an aha moment when you learned about relativity or those kinds of concepts?
I think I had a sequence. I used to keep getting it, and then a month later I'd be like, no, I don't have it anymore, and then I'd study it again, and oh yeah, now I get it. So yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge.
And that's the way science works. It's often about practice and interest. And so what got you interested into climate change, the field of climate change?
I think it's difficult to remember when I first became aware of it. I know I was aware of it 25 or so years ago, and probably before that. And we already understood plenty about climate change by then. So that was late 1980s, and then the more I learned, the more interested and more concerned I became. Like a lot of scientists or people trained as scientists, I thought once we understood it, then we'd fix it. And it seems that we understand it very well, but there's still quite a lot we have to do to fix it.
And it's an interesting topic, the topic of climate change. When I was in college, I remember that nationally people were hotly debating and arguing the existence of climate change. There were a lot of political parties and affiliates saying that there is no such thing as climate change. What are you talking about? So is it now, are we all official? Are we all on the same page, policy-wise and nationally, that there is climate change happening?
We are official that there is climate change that's happening.
And is this because of the inconvenient truth?
No, that was really a summary of the highlights of some of the science. People are often surprised to learn that we first understood that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. In other words, it creates climate change more than 150 years ago. So that science isn't new. More than 100 years ago, we did the calculations that said, what if mankind burned enough oil, coal, and gas to change the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, what would that do? And so that calculation, like I said, was done more than 100 years ago. It was pretty much dead on. And since then, we've been filling in the details. So in the 80s, it became, 1980s, it became particularly hot, and that was when a lot of the more detailed work was done and the understanding really firmed up. And that just continued through the 90s and through this century. An Inconvenient Truth was, I think, 2006. So it came well after we had a deep understanding. But to go back to, is it official? Yes, the National Academy of Sciences in this nation, and in fact every country in the world that has a National Academy of Sciences, they all understand that climate change is happening and mankind is doing it. Every scientific society in the world, the AAAS, NOAA, NASA, Scripps, Oceanography, anybody you want to mention, it's official.
It's official.
Your second question was, are we all on the same page?
Right.
No. I shouldn't speculate as to why some people either don't understand or don't want to hear.
Or don't take it seriously.
Or don't take it seriously. That's why I do what I do, to try and help more people understand and take it seriously.
So tell us about the melting permafrost and methane hydrate.
Right. That's kind of the very bad news that isn't quite as bad as we thought it might be. Since we worked out that we could change the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases enough to seriously change the world's climate, we've been hoping that there's something that would kick in to make things better. Maybe plants will grow more, maybe rocks will absorb it, maybe clouds will form to reflect sunlight and cool us down again. Maybe there's some mechanism that's going to save us from ourselves. Unfortunately, we haven't found any of those. What we have found is a couple of things that might kick in and make it much worse. And those are the melting permafrost and methane hydrates. The Arctic Circle has frozen ground, permafrost, and it's heating up. The number of drivable days on ice roads in Alaska has plummeted. The Iditarod dog sled race has been moved north because they don't have enough ice or snow anymore. And as the ground warms up, it starts rotting and it starts releasing carbon dioxide and methane, which is even worse than carbon dioxide. And so that became a very big concern, that as we warm the planet, the permafrost would warm, it would release unspeakable quantities of greenhouse gases, and nothing that we would be able to do would stop it. That's the very bad news. The good side of it, the good news, is we believe that will take long enough for us to do something. We believe it will take hundreds, if not 1,000 years or more. We don't think it will tip and suddenly everything will start rotting and releasing gas. We think it's a gradual process. Methane hydrates are even worse. They are methane which is basically trapped on the ocean floor, again in the Arctic, and I'm not sure about the Antarctic. And as those warm, they release, like I said, methane, what we call natural gas, what we burn in our stoves and heat our houses with, which is even worse than CO2. There's again vast quantities of them, and as they warm, the concern was that they would release. And again, we believe and we hope that that's a slow process, but it is sobering. We're taking a risk on that, like we're taking a risk on everything else.
So that's interesting. So the rate is still slow enough where we can possibly impact some kind of mediation.
We hope, I choose to be
Yes.
optimistic, we hope and we must act as if we can still fix this.
Fix it. And what is the difference between methane and carbon dioxide? Why is methane hydrate so much worse than carbon dioxide?
Methane as a gas is worse. It does a better job of trapping heat than carbon dioxide does. It's just the chemical makeup and the wavelengths of light. It just does a better job at that. It is something like 70 or 80 times as powerful as CO2. It doesn't stay up there as long. When we release carbon dioxide, it stays up there for more than 100 years. Methane stays up there for something like 20 years. So it has a much bigger effect for a shorter period of time. If you average it out, it's about 20 times as bad as carbon dioxide. So that's why when people say, oh, let's get off of coal, let's move to so-called natural gas, methane, it's just as bad as coal.
So it's not actually a remedy.
No.
And people don't understand that.
No.
So I read a recent article in January published by the World Bank Group, where after the week at the economic summit at Davos, where President Kim talks about declaring 2014 as the year of climate action. And he called on government leaders to put a price on carbon and have financial regulators require companies and financial institutions to assess their exposure to climate-related risks and to disclose them. How do you feel about this, and what do you think are the chances for the success of policies such as these?
Well, I think that those two are two of the very best policies. Now, we're stepping out of, as we should, we're stepping out of science into society and action and politics. And we understand the science better than we understand anything else that we run our society on, like whether to build a school or build a road. We make guesses. With carbon dioxide and climate change, we know. As for what we have to do about it and how people are going to respond and what's the best way to get people to respond, we're into the normal realm of politics. However, I do think that putting a price on carbon is the single most effective way of addressing the problem, because it uses the free market. It uses every person, every company, every opportunity to make a change. It'll spread throughout the whole economy, and it'll just tilt behavior in the right way, like I said, in a million different ways. And it doesn't have to be a tax. We don't have to take the money and keep it. The most persuasive tool, I think, is you put a price on carbon, and then you just simply give the money back. So it adjusts the behavior, but it doesn't grow government or make people's lives harder. So I think that is the way to go. There's an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby who are leaders on that. And then the other part of the question, people disclosing, shareholders are demanding that. ExxonMobil are now disclosing their carbon risk to shareholders. And what that is simply the idea that they've discovered more oil and gas than we can possibly burn. And they currently own that. And so they have an asset, a huge asset on their books that they can simply never use if we're going to have any chance. So that presents a risk to their business.
And I assume that for developing countries, that would be viewed more of a punitive action rather than understanding the benefits of the carbon levy.
In developing countries is a very interesting area. The hope is that just like they did with telecoms, they can skip the steps that we took. We put in a lot of copper when we started, talking to each other over telephones, and then a new technology came along, which was wireless cell phones, and a large proportion of the developing world, they just went straight to cell phones and missed that step out. Renewables are coming down in price so fast that the hope is that developing nations will be able to skip the whole dirty coal, oil, and gas and just go straight to renewables.
Sort of learn from the experiments of developed nations and do better.
And just take a better product, like a cell phone is better than a landline.
So the World Bank Group president also states that globally, weather-related losses and damage have risen from an average of about 50 billion a year in the late 80s to close to 200 billion a year over the last decade. And how do you feel about this? Do you think that it's going to continue and that's accurate? It's going to get worse?
It seems to be, and yes, it's going to get worse. The one that does it for me is the businesses whose job it is to ensure those losses. The two hugest ones are Swiss Re and Munich Re. They have both independently determined that what the president of the World Bank said, and their losses from climate-related disasters have gone up in a way that their losses from others haven't gone up. So it suggests that it's not just the fact we have more staff or any other factor. Climate damage is increasing, and you look at the size of the numbers. The 100 billion or 150 billion it is extra per year. If we spent that on fixing the problem, or if we spent anything like that on fixing the problem, we'd be fine.
The Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and Climate Analytics put out a report in November of 2012, and they talk about why 4 degrees Celsius warmer temperature globally must be avoided. Please comment.
It can be tricky to understand. 4 degrees doesn't sound like a whole lot. If it's a difference between a warm day and a cool day, or a very hot day and a not quite so hot day. Unfortunately, when you apply that change to the entire planet, to the whole climate system, that has very, very dramatic effects. Like we said, we're already seeing an increase in climate disasters like Hurricane Sandy, and the one that hit Vermont, his name is escaping me. And we've had 0.6 of a degree warming. So we're seeing dramatic effects already. The drought in California may be related to climate change, the recent flooding in England.
Forest fires.
Yeah. And that's less than 1 degree. Far short of 4 degrees, the global consensus is 2 degrees, is really the upper limit. And people are beginning to revise that down and say if we hit 2 degrees, we're in major difficulties. So right now we're headed for somewhere between 8 and 11 by the end of this century. We are headed towards wiping out 30 to 40% of the species on Earth, and that's obviously what we have to change.
Right, and I think people don't understand what we mean when we say wiping out species. For example, so I just read this example, so I'll throw it out there. Birds. Birds, if spring starts earlier, and the birds have an internal clock to wake up at a certain time and come out and start looking for food, and they miss all the food because spring has started earlier, then there's a less chance for them to pass on their genes to the next generation, thereby wiping out that entire species of bird. So this is what people don't sort of understand. They think, how does that work? Like 4 degrees, why does that wipe out so many species on the Earth? And I also read a recent article about how about 125 Arctic lakes have dried up.
I wasn't aware of that.
Over the last 10 years. And that seems to be a large number.
Yes, and Glacier National Park won't have any glaciers within hopefully my lifetime.
And
well, I mean, hopefully I live long enough.
Right.
But the forecast is, the forecast is.
And that's half a degree.
Yeah.
Of difference.
Yeah. And as the glaciers move up, then the species move up, and they move off the top of the mountain, and there's nowhere for them to go.
Right, and everyone likes polar bears, right? So now there's when we can all relate when it comes to the polar bears, where the polar bears have to now swim longer distances because of all the glacial ice water melting, and it's harder on them.
Yes.
To retain body fat and.
No, you're right.
Right. So tell us a bit about your work with the Climate Reality Project.
Well, like I said, I've been interested in climate for a number of years. I've done some talks previously to this, been involved in a number of organizations, and then I'm not quite sure where it came from or how it came, but I got an invitation from former Vice President Al Gore's organization to come and learn how to give his pitch, his speech. So you mentioned Inconvenient Truth.
Right.
That was 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And it's basically that talk today. There isn't, I don't think, a single slide which is still the same, but it's evolved over that time. And Al Gore gives the speech, and he trains other people to give it. So he invited me and 999 other people to San Francisco and went through the 300 plus slides one by one over an entire day. And so now I'm what they call a climate leader, and I give the talk. I have taken out quite a few of the slides, and I'll give the talk anywhere from 15 minutes upwards now. And you know, I've given a number since then in and around Wellesley, down to Rhode Island. You know, we go where anyone's interested.
And the BBC.
Yeah, that was actually on a different subject.
Yeah.
That was on a different subject.
So not on climate change.
Not on climate change, no. There are people that talk on the BBC about climate change.
The next one. The
That's
next
right.
one
There
you
you
do
go.
back.
From Wellesley to BBC,
There
it's
you
a small
go.
step.
That's right. And tell us about your work with Alder Associates.
I'm a partner in a small firm. We're a management consulting group. We came out of a much larger company, and what we put together was I was on the strategy side, so it's, you know, deciding which direction to go, and I got frustrated with working out the best direction and then watching companies not go there. And we put that together with people that are transformational, and they can help teams get active and tell the truth to each other and get out of their own way and get fired up. But if they didn't know which direction to go, then you also weren't helping. So what we do is we put both together. We do the strategy at the same time that we're working on the team. At the same time we're working on, you know, how they want to behave and how they want to get things done. And we find that works very well.
And do you suggest financial implications or business implications for them as well, like in terms of better profits if they follow a better environmental strategy?
We deal with the issues that they have. So if that includes environmental strategy, then yes. If it doesn't, then no. And we do for-profit and not-for-profit. So sometimes it's about the bottom line, and sometimes it isn't.
Right. So it's a good mix.
Yeah.
And tell us about your work with Sustainable Wellesley.
Well, Sustainable Wellesley is a great group, started by a guy called Scott Bender, and then a number of us joined and fleshed it out. We do events, we have a newsletter, we have a great Facebook page, we support local initiatives, and it is just a fun group of people with a pretty large membership. The one that we're really excited about at the moment is solar power in Wellesley. The town of Wellesley, the SEC, has put together a really great scheme to help people put solar panels up. I know a lot of people have been thinking about it, and it's just, you know, getting through the details and is it really right for me and can I afford it? Wellesley has packaged the whole thing, has worked out all of the incentives, has added some extra incentives, and made it really easy for people this year. So we're supporting that in a big way at the moment. It's wellesleypowertochoose.com is the place to go to find out more about it.
Great. And it's funny, I had a friend visiting, and I drove them into the Wellesley recycling facility. And she said, you know, this looks like a tourist site.
It does.
This is awesome. So it's great. We have a good spot, good things in the town going on.
Yeah, and you know, it saves us money.
Right.
It saves us a lot of money. So a lot of these things do.
And so give us a little spoiler alert, a little spoiler segment about what your talk is going to be at the expo.
Well, because it's STEM, I'm focusing on the science and the technology and engineering and the math. So in my regular talk, there's a fair amount about politics and how to get action to happen, because there's no point understanding something, like in Alder Associates, if you're not then going to do something about it. On the 5th, I'm going to be staying more on the science, because I think that's what people are interested in. And I've got a couple of different ways of helping people understand just how much carbon dioxide there is up there, and how we know that temperature is changing, how we know CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and some of the impacts that has.
Awesome. Well, sounds like it's going to be very exciting.
I hope so.
And how do you, as a parent, how do you get your children into understanding these things early?
It kind of rubs off because they know that I'm doing it. It's my daughter's job to do the recycling at home. So, like I said, we don't have trash, we have recycling, which she processes. She's 10. Like any parent, I'm running around after them, turning off the lights, talking about leaving the door open in summer or winter, energy use. So it's through things like that. And my son has naturally picked up on, I think, a love for animals. So he relates in that way. And I don't lecture them on it. I think, like I said, I choose to be optimistic, but some of the news can be quite scary. So I don't want to burden them with that just yet. I think we stay on what we can do and the positive side of it.
Stay on domestic.
Yeah, the things you can actually affect
global.
As a child. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. Really appreciate it.
And stay tuned for a video from the World Bank Group about the resilience and building and helping the resilience of coastal populations in Bangladesh, dealing with climate change.
The Coastal Embankment Project is an opportunity for the World Bank to work closely with the government of Bangladesh and build climate resilience in the coastal area of Bangladesh. This is the coastal area. It's on the Bay of Bengal, and it's a very low-lying area. So as you can imagine, any storm surge that happens can inundate a large surface. The challenge we face in Bangladesh is that it's a small country and densely populated. So there is no place else to go for the coastal population.
Bangladesh is located at where there are major rivers come and they form the deltas. So historically the land is very fertile. So density is very high. With the high density, people don't have enough land and they move to the areas which are normally not habitable. And that is particularly the coastal area.
If you recall, back in 1970, a tropical cyclone hit this area and killed over 300,000 people in Bangladesh alone. So this population is really very vulnerable to natural disaster. The bank and the government have already been working very hard over the past few years in building over 2,000 cyclone shelters. These shelters enable people during cyclone to take refuge in elevated shelters.
The estimates are that in the next few years they need 2,000 more shelters. But at this time it is at what rate you can build, because these shelters are in very, very remote areas and very difficult to build. So far they have not been able to build more than 30 shelters a year. And we are trying to take it to about 100 shelters a year. Bangladesh has developed a very elaborate cyclone preparedness program together with the Red Cross. When there is a warning of the cyclone, that brings people to the shelters. So warning has improved a lot these years, and most of the time people have enough warning.
An embankment is basically a man-made earth wall that protects against flooding. So you can protect people living inside this polder from any inundation during tropical cyclones. And the more you strengthen and you raise the height of the embankment, the more protection you provide.
About 100,000 hectare area will be protected from tidal surging and the salinity intrusion. And it will brought about 86,000 agricultural land directly. Agriculture production will be doubled and the food security of the country will be enhanced.
So this is the project which will do reconstruction and upgrading of the embankment system in a very systematic way, and incorporates in it 2-3 important factors which were not incorporated before. One is some protection against storm surge, and also making allowance for water level changes and surge level changes due to the climate change.
The people of the South Bengal will be protected and their livelihoods, which are affected tremendously by these revisits of the cyclonic storms and water surges, will be significantly reduced.
So we hope that through this project we will be able to provide more protection for the coastal population.